For fuck's sake. Excuse me, Rich. Can anyone hear me? Oh, well, okay. Sorry about that. I have too many windows open and I have no idea what's going on. I tried to use Streamlabs OBS and it completely disintegrated. So thank you all for moving over to the new stream. For some reason, it wouldn't let me select the first stream. I don't know. I'm gonna go clear it up after the stream is finished. But thank you for joining. Oh, and it says, yeah. So the idea was that it was going to be Streamlabs OBS. We have a live chat. We have it reacting when people do super chats and subscribe. But it's all screwed up, and even YouTube screwed up the title now. It says 10K. It should be 50K. Oh. Anyway, hope everybody's doing well. I've got my usual 2 drinks, coffee, and a nice cold water because it's currently 30 degrees in the UK. And this is my Global Foundries mug. We might be talking a little bit about Global Foundries later. But yeah, so 50,000 subscribers stream happened a couple of days ago, Thursday. Thank you all for subscribing, for those who are. Really means a lot. I never knew I'd be here, just over a year ago when I started the channel. But no, it's thanks to you all. Thanks for liking some of my videos. I know some haven't done that well, and some have sort of been more of a labor of love than really actually, saying something important. But the last few have been, really well received. So that Creator on the Rise, IBM 2nm video, that went crazy. I think I now have 5 videos north of 100K views, 2 million views total on the channel. It's funny, I have a small bet going with Patrick from Serve the Home. Serve the Home video, that he's on about 70,000 subscribers. So we need to. He keeps saying, "Oh no, you'll be ahead of me by the end of the year," but we'll see. We'll see about that. He still has the leg up on me on that. Thank you all for coming in. I have to say a big thanks to Planet 886 for the 750 Taiwanese. Upgrade that stream, Potato. So since we did the first sort of 10K stream subscribe stream, I've gone out and bought a proper DSLR. So this is a GH5, along with one of the £200 Rode mics. That's literally just out of stream here. I've got a fancy arm and a phone. I'm going to do some overhead videos for some stuff that's come in. I'm still, unfortunately, in a spot of London where my bandwidth is only 80/20, which is a bit frustrating. So thank you, Japir Sethi, for the 100 rupees. Much appreciated. It's a drink to you. And I know a few of you are pointing out that the Formula One Silverstone race is this weekend, and it's actually sprint qualifying in 20 minutes. No, sorry, sprint race, because they're changing it up. I don't normally watch F1 live just because I don't have Sky and I have to get it through other means. But if you want to go out and watch, be my guest. Just probably try not to tell me the results, I think. No, it's usually quite bad. If you don't watch it live, then you've got to make sure you stay off of social media as well. So this is meant to be a sort of counting your chip stream, a little dive into some of the tech news. So I've actually spent the last couple of days off. Those of you who follow my Twitter might remember that my grandfather passed away a couple of weeks ago. So we actually had his funeral on Thursday. that was the day we actually hit 50K on the channel. So unfortunately, I haven't necessarily been all within the tech news the last couple of days, but I've got a few items that I think we should talk about. The idea for this stream was meant to be starting with let's start with talking about the channel. So I need to bring my display over, and as is perhaps usual, this isn't going too well. Should be in studio mode. Here we go. So channel, yeah, just past 50,000 subscribers. Thank you to you all. Videos, top videos are, yeah, like I said, the IBM one, 400,000. That's crazy. That was literally something I did after I did an Antec piece, wrote that, and then literally spent the next 3 hours writing that up. Tsmc 7 nanometer, speaking about some of the prices for wafers, is my... Can everybody see me? Yeah, okay. Then yeah, an older one, 10 nanometer. This one's Cerebrus. I think you all know by now I'm big fans of Cerebrus. So it's going to be fun. I've got them on my list of companies to visit next time I'm in the Bay Area when that all opens up. And then, you know, processors, square, circular, bless the wafers, stacked CPUs, all that jazz. Interviews, I've been enjoying doing the interviews lately. So we got Keller, Jim Keller. That's a really fun interview. That went on for almost 100 minutes, yeah. Tense torrent. And then a series of Intel, AMD. I am hoping to stretch out the interviews. I'm trying to sort one out with Rebecca Weekly, who's the new chairman of Open Compute Project. That should be fun. And I've already got one lined up with Jim Anson from Lattice. They do the sort of small FPGAs, and they've made really big strides recently. They're actually in 85% of servers. I know Jim because Jim used to be in charge of Ryzen at AMD during first and second gen. So I haven't spoken to him in a while. So I've got about 35 minutes to speak with him in a couple of weeks. So that's going to be a fun interview. If you feel like there are people that I should interview, do let me know. I'm in a spot where I'm trying to not always do Intel and AMD, because the Intel and AMD, they will chuck people at me continuously if I want to interview them. Trying to spread out a bit more in the market. I spoke to Synopsys CEO Art de Gois recently, though I think because they've got a Hot Chips keynote, and hopefully that will lead into a more formal sort of interview. I spoke with him for an hour, and it was just off the cuff, great speaking sort of stuff. And thank you all for commenting. Sorry, I'm not completely following all the chat right now. How is your bandwidth so bad? Stuart, London internet, UK internet, they're upgrading it in patches. So I have fiber to the cabinet, not fiber to the home. So my choices are either 8020 or 310. So I went with 8020. Parts of the UK are getting upgraded to, gigabit, but it's being very slow. What is Formula One? Best racing series ever, Alpha. You should go watch. Yeah, so this stream, I wanted to talk about, so Intel Global Foundries, a little bit of news to talk about. Then Ryzen 5000 with Chagall, supposedly coming soon. Russia is developing a RISC-V laptop CPU. I wrote up on an Antec. I'm going to cover it in the video today. Talk a little bit about the SteamDeck from Valve, or as I wrote initially, StreamDeck. And then maybe touch upon one of the research papers that you all have been asking me to cover, the Google's Mercurial Cores. So if you really like the sort of content that I do, the main way to help is watch channel. But also, I have a Patreon, and as you might expect, all of my tiers are CPU related. Special CEO tier. A couple of companies are investing at that level. And alongside that, I should probably say that I'm getting to a size now where companies are thinking of advertising on the channel. So you may have seen that the Linode recently sponsored a few videos. They've got a couple more coming up. And then I'm also speaking to some more, getting into an interesting discussion about sponsored content, how that conflicts with my role at Antech and the written stuff, because it's a video I kind of want to do separately on the ethics of when you written work. If you do sponsored written work, suddenly that becomes a sentence at the end of every single piece of written content you do. However, if you're on YouTube, say you do a sponsored video for a company, the next video could literally be a review of that company and it wouldn't be mentioned. Interesting. I'm not sure if you've thought about it in that context at all. I should probably coalesce those thoughts into a proper video for you all. And I know a few of you are posting questions. And thank you to OMG Puppies for the $20. Is it practical for TSMC to build fab lines in the US and EU in case Taiwan is invaded by China? So short answer is yes, it's practical. Is Taiwan being invaded by China something I think is on the horizon? No, only if they get really desperate. And thanks, Jeff, for the $10. You really don't have to. But thank you for saying congrats. It really does mean a lot. And actually, let's come here. So I will point out that today I'm wearing my full nerd t-shirt. If you all don't watch the PC World weekly podcast on Tuesdays, it's Tuesday evening UK time, so Tuesday afternoon, I guess, US time. Go watch Gordon, Brad. They've just hired Keith May, who used to do the WCCF tech videos. He didn't do stuff written on the website, but he did the videos. He's now being hired by PC World. Andrew Patrick Murray, Elena Yee. They're all good, fun people. It'd be good to meet those guys again when we get traveling on the road. But yeah, definitely check out the PC World live stream as well. And just going through some chat here. What's the meaning of life? 42. And yes, this isn't the WAN show. We use units of measure correctly around here. That was a fun back and forth with Linus, I'll be honest. He knows I only have good intentions, and he knows it's a bit of a joke. And we spoke, off to the side anyway about it. Can he use content, whatever. And it's we are science communicators, and so I guess one of the people who I should interview is Linus and bring this topic up about whether we are reviewers, analysts, science communicators, entertainers. How many hats do we wear? I do written and video. He does video, and he has a team behind that. It's an interesting business model about how we have to project ourselves in order to grow. And that was things like getting accuracy on units it's just a fun topic to talk about, because we all have blind spots and we all do things by rote. And yeah, if somebody comes along and says you're doing it wrong, instantly you're going to defend yourself, because that means you've been calling me an idiot for the last 10 years. But as always with us, it's a learning process, and we hope that through our communication to you guys, it's a learning process as well. And, just get everything sort of rounded off, I think. So topics of the day. Let's go back to the Chrome tabs. So I use Social Blade to keep track of some of my stats. So yeah, 2.1 million views in a little over a year. Ignore that. I don't know why they have that date. And yeah, this big spike was the IBM video. Really, really fun. So I guess first thing is to point out that I now have a new clips channel. So as a result of the Keller interviews and, seeing people like Lex Fridman, they have their own clips channels. I decided to put out my own clips channel. I'm going to go back through some of the interviews and some of the streams. I might even clip some bits of this stream, to put on this channel. If you'd much rather have bite-sized chunks of those sorts of videos, here's the place to go. And this actually takes longer than you think. It takes a few hours just to clip all the videos, do the thumbnails, even though the thumbnails are the way they are. Just making sure you get the right photo of Jim or do something like that. And I actually use OBS to do my thumbnails. But I'm going to go through previous interviews. Going to do some more interviews, clip those. Just an offload so we don't sort of clog up the main channel. I think because sometimes channels have to you can't do one-off content in the same way on the main channel. It's YouTube algorithm is weird. Thank you for the $5. Cloud Dialer. Sorry if I'm butchering that. What do you think of the F1 sprint race at Silverstone? I think it's good that they're mixing up the qualifying format. I mean, the qualifying format was good, but this means, as a proportion, more competitive racing in a weekend. That Chain Bear has a really good video on the concept of sprint qualifying and how, while it may be great for some tracks, it's obviously not going to be good for others. So take Monaco, for example. Sprint wouldn't really work in Monaco, but something like one-shot qualifying might work in Monaco. I think that's pretty good. And also, any thoughts on the custom AMD chip in the SteamDeck? I think we're going to go to that one. Ted Hart Davis, thank you for the £5. Congrats on the milestone. Gained interest in your work through Wendell. Here's a small thanks. Keep up the awesome effort. Awesome, man. And Hardware Unboxed, is that Tim or Steve? But yeah, OBS for thumbnails. It works surprisingly well because it's the easiest interface that puts a outline around text. All of my thumbnails do the impact font with a black outline, and it works really well. So let's go to congrats on the 50K, Dr. Ian Cutthroat. Only one person calls me Cutthroat. Is that you? So first topic, let's talk about Global Foundries, Global Foundries mug. Intel in talks to buy Global Foundries for about $30 billion. So if you remember a few weeks ago, we had Intel rumored to be buying Sci5, and now they're just in a partnership with them. Intel in talks to buy Global Foundries for $30 billion. So here's the thing. Intel, makes its own chips, mostly makes its own chips, doesn't really have any sort of outsourcing, but is starting a new foundry effort. But pretty much all of Intel's manufacturing, apart from 22FFL, is focused on high performance, high frequency, logic, and dense SRAM cells. Global Foundries, on the other hand, if you've been following Global Foundries, you know that they spun off from AMD, then did a 10-year collaboration with IBM, which they're currently being sued for, where they took a lot of IBM's property and some money in order to build chips for IBM. Then they became a widespread contract manufacturer for 90, all the way down to 28, then down to 14, 12 nanometer. They were pushing for 7 nanometer, but then that got cancelled, and I'm of the opinion that it got cancelled because their major owner, Mubadala, which is one of the Arab states' tech funds, decided that they'd pumped too much money into the company as weren't getting a return. So rather than push for an EUV-based 7 nanometer process, they just cut it. I actually toured the fab in Global Foundries, Fab 8 in Malta, upstate New York, to when they had one of those EUV machines installed. So that's been ripped out, that was sold. And what Global Foundries has been doing is been building up specialty technologies. So they can do RF, they can do high voltage, they can do MEMS, they can do analog. And the whole point about Global Foundries is that it addresses 70% of the silicon market. 30% need high performance, high frequency, low power, prepared to pay for the really high end. That's kind of what Intel and half of what TSMC does. But the other 70% of the market is these specialty technologies, and that's what Global Foundries does. I don't see Global Foundries doing anything beyond 12 nanometer, 12 FDX, at least in the next 10 years, for example, not until the price of EUV machines come down. So Intel buying Global Foundries is a little weird because their markets don't overlap, right? The only reason why I can see Intel going to buy Global Foundries is if they want to just get into the market and mindset of, okay, we're a full foundry player and this is what we do. And they're prepared to take on all of Global Foundries facilities and addressing the 70% of the market that Intel currently doesn't sell into. So it would purely be on a scale of understanding the concept of building out specialty process nodes, technologies, and then, having, whatever revenue generation. So people say that, well, maybe doesn't Global Foundries have some sort of AMD IP still tied up? It's been years since they spun out. Yes, they still manufacture, but it's just the same as any other customer. And as Hardware Unboxed says in the chat, Intel buying Global Foundries would keep thousands of regulators around the world employed for a fair while. I don't think it's that much of an issue because, like I said, Global Foundries addresses 70% of the market, Intel addresses 30% of the market. Yes, they're both foundries, but they're doing completely different things. So I think it's a lot less of an issue than most people think. Well, I mean, this is the Reuters. At least they're using a modern Intel chip. 30 billion. None of the companies are confirming anything. Intel's already done its IDM 2.0 discussions. So Mubadala is looking for a potential listing of Global Foundries later in the year. So Global Foundries was going to do an IPO next year. I actually spoke with the CEO of Global Foundries, Dr. Thomas Caulfield, probably about 8 weeks ago now. And, this is where a lot of this 70-30 discussion that I'm telling you came from. And he said, the demand for silicon, for markets like automotive, for embedded, for IoT, which is their key market for somebody like Global Foundries, is expanding. And as a result, they can fast track some ideas they've had in the works. And an IPO is probably the best part of this. So Intel buying Global Foundries, that means that Intel could perhaps jump ahead of the IPO and get in. Though, I'm not sure. It would be one of Intel's biggest, if not the biggest acquisition, if 30 billion is correct. I mean, Altera was 15 billion, and that didn't really work out, did it? So Intel declined to comment, and as expected, Global Foundries didn't comment. Funny thing is, though, if you go over to Global Foundries Twitter account here, they're doing something on the 19th, which is Monday. I wonder what that could be. A new era begins. A lot of I've seen some people saying, whether it's about the IPO or it's about process technology or it's about expansion or possible rebranding. I don't think it's got anything to do with any sort of acquisition. If anything, it's got to be IPO. Global Foundries has plenty of space to expand. They recently announced Singapore expansion. Malta still is actually a third empty, physically empty, and apparently the Dresden fab is half empty. So it's just a case of getting in machines and spinning up lines. One thing I did note when going through some of these analyst analysis of revenue is that global foundries, during this high period of semiconductor demand, where the main fabs, TSMC, Samsung, were increasing in, say, 20, 30, 40, up to 60% revenue, global foundries was only 7%, which makes you think that it's missed the boat a little bit. But let's see. In terms of global foundries' actual value, this is, Google. This is, let me guess, this is actually my article. No, Anton's. Okay. Yeah. Global foundries earned approximately 5.7 billion revenue in 2020. So 30 billion would probably be too little. What's the standard merger and acquisition? 10x? 10x? So, yeah, and even down from 2017. 2017 was a high year. That's because global foundries is also, investing, but that's, revenue versus. And even then, this expansion and IPO, global foundries in typical years spent 700 million. Production is expected to increase by 13 and 20%, and then 22 FTX and 12 FTX. I really wish global foundries would do more of a tech day similar to Samsung and TSMC every year, but we'll see. We'll see. So, what do you all think on that? Let's go through some chat. What are the implications of this buyout for AMD in regards to their I/O dies? Probably next to nothing. These are contracts. When you buy a company, you have to adhere to the contracts. Let's see. Biggest surprise is Global Foundries worth 30 billion. I think it's worth more than that. Isn't Global Foundries building a lot of camera sensors now? Yep, that's a key market for them. Especially the IP camera, but 1080p sort of stuff. Yep, do that. Jim Tracy, yeah, sorry about the. We ended up having 2 streams, and the description is all wrong on the second stream because Streamlabs OBS screwed up. But thank you all for coming over. Really do appreciate it. If you're wondering why I'm looking up here, I've actually gone from a 2-screen setup to a 3-screen setup. I've bought one of those portable monitors, Asus 13-14 inch 1080p IPS panels. Got it in Amazon Prime. Yeah, it's nice having more screen real estate. I don't think I can manage one big monitor. I like to have lots of little ones. Predabot, all x86 CPU tech is out of patent. How useful would CPUs created without the new instructions be? A couple of people have been talking about that. The issue there is while the instruction sets are patented, some of the unique designs, clever designs around, cache and how the core actually works are still under patent. So you're going to have to tread through a minefield to get that to work. Zero Infinity asks, where are the kitty cats? The kitty cats are sleeping. So, and for everybody who still wants to watch the F1, it started like 5 minutes ago. So have fun watching that. AVX says hello. Let's see. Is there any universe in which AMD buys Black Global Foundries? No, I don't think so. Esky Monster says, how many wafers TSMC produce daily? It's about 12 million a year. So what's that? Divided by 365. 33,000 12-inch wafer equivalents. And of that, half of the revenue for TSMC is in leading edge. So that's 14 and 7. And the other half is beyond that. So, 28, 40, 45. And a lot of money is still spent on 19 nanometer. The thing is, of those 12 million a year TSMC produces, only about 2 to 3 million are 16 and 7 nanometer, are on the leading edge process nodes. So actually most wafers at TSMC are still on the older process nodes. 3 nanometer is already getting reserved by Intel and Apple. So Stuart, that was a rumor, a leak. Did anybody actually confirm that? I never saw anybody that could actually confirm it. I think everybody was just quoting was it a Digitimes article or something? It's back in one of my earlier videos, I think it was the IDM 2.0 video, I stated that Pat Gelsinger, when he says he's going to be using external foundries more, I pointed out that if they're going to go big on TSMC, TSMC wants a multi-year deal. So they want commitment, probably in terms of millions of wafers, actually, whether that's across several product lines, because they're not just going to build a fab specifically for Intel if Intel are going to be there one generation and ditch. TSMC will want a multi-year collaboration. So if Intel are one of the lead customers on 3 nanometer, then they would have to be buying on the order of, 1 million wafers over the course of a couple of years, 2-3 years probably. The next question then is, will Intel have figured out how to do its CPU designs or anything else like that? So let's see. And I think, so for TSMC, for example, what stuff components are fine with being made on the 45 nanometer and older nodes? So funny thing is that if you look at a smartphone, standard smartphone, or there's only 2 real things that are on leading edge process node technology. That's the SoC and the modem, if it's got an external modem, and then maybe some of the transceiver, RF stuff. There is another 6 or 7 times that amount of silicon in a smartphone that's not on leading edge. If you bear with me, I believe I have a picture about this in my ideas folder. Future videos. No, okay. Not immediately accessible. But I did want to do a video on literally that sort of concept of, you have, while your leading edge silicon is the most important, you still have lots of silicon, power amplifiers, controllers, microcontrollers. There's a lot of different silicon inside a smartphone, inside a smart TV, inside of a monitor, inside of a camera that is not on the leading edge. What kind of node is cutting edge analog anyway? I believe I can actually find that picture because I remember what article it's on. And this is, see if I can get this picture full screen. Just bear with me 1 second, because I do think this is important. So this is probably potato quality. However, so this is TSMC, right? So you have on the left-hand side, on the y-axis, you've got your process node, and on the x-axis, you've got all the different types of technology. So MEMS, which is microelectronic machining, that's like microfluidics and stuff, image sensors, embedded memory, radio frequency, logic, analog, high voltage, power ICs, and you can see what sort of nodes each of these different sorts of technologies are actually built on. So logic obviously gets everything. Some of these have skipped a couple of nodes. If you want image sensors, 28 nanometer, 40 nanometer. If you want analog, 16 nanometer, 22, 28. If you're on high voltage, you're still at 28, 40, 55, 65. Power ICs, they're actually regressing slightly because they don't need to be on 40 nanometer. And that's kind of... So if you think about Intel in this part literally pretty much only has the logic section. TSMC has all of this. Global Foundries is a little bit lower on the logic, but also has lots of stuff dotted out for this sort of thing. So what Intel would be doing is would end up with a more TSMC-like process node technology portfolio if they bought Global Foundries. So I hope that that makes that clear. Let's see. Mr. Vipitis, FPGAs not on 14 nanometer, lots of FPGAs on 14 nanometer. Thank you, Amar Virchana, for being a viewer since day one. The issue is that with the process node development, you either do it in very small steps and you productize each step, or you do it in large jumps and then productize the jumps. TSMC has been doing it in steps, Intel's been doing it in jumps, and Samsung is doing it in little steps. So we all know how well those three companies are doing in that regard. So let's go on to some more of the news that I wanted to cover. AMD Ryzen Threadripper 5000, or Chagall, process to arrive this August, according to TechPotato. So back at the start of the year, it was widely thought that Threadripper would be coming in early June, Computex time. And that's really honestly what I expected at the start of the year. That would have been the right time. However, we've been through high period of semiconductor demand. We've also been through AMD having 6 or 7 product lines all selling out really well. We've got 2 consoles, graphics cards, Ryzen desktop CPUs, APUs, server processors. I think I'm probably forgetting a couple of others, but it's normally when you have that many products in the market at once, some do well, some do not. AMD's in a situation where everything is doing well, and they're also still in a performance lead, so no need to worry so much. So the fact that Threadripper is coming later than expected, it is what it is. But yeah, we were expecting just a simple Zen 2 to Zen 3 upgrade on Threadripper using the latest WRX40 motherboards. So yeah, the S, whatever they call the motherboards now, I keep forgetting, because you've got the first and second gen doing X399, then you got third gen Ryzen Threadripper, third gen Ryzen Threadripper using Zen 2 on 1, and then you've got Threadripper Pro, which I've recently reviewed, which is another chipset because that's 8 channels. But we're expecting to see these with the need a BIOS update. Zen 3 CCDs, this is not going to have Vcache, pretty much guaranteed of that. And then the big upgrade is obviously the IPC, and we've already seen a roughly 19% IPC increase. The only concern here really with Threadripper on Zen 3 is that you're getting this 19% extra performance on the cores, but your memory bandwidth isn't increasing. So your performance per bandwidth byte is essentially being slightly worse because the bandwidth isn't rising to meet the increase in performance. And that's kind of always the case because they're stuck with JDEC memory and such. But then on Threadripper Pro, get the 8-channel memory. I fully expect Threadripper Pro to be probably Q1 next year. Lag because it's a new product and it's Pro, and that's they recently launched a Zen 2 based Threadripper Pro, which, funny enough, if I get my act together, my 5-year-old 6950X system that I've got down here, I do want to upgrade it to a Threadripper Pro system. I'm waiting for a couple more things to come in, and then perhaps we'll do a build live stream of that. But it does mean I have to literally move everything away, because I literally only have one machine that does everything. So maybe I need to split it out into a separate streaming machine and such. And then upgrade to next generation Threadripper Pro when it comes along. Here, so this I think has been quoted in a few places. AMD is also increasing the XGMI2 bandwidth, which is essentially Infinity Fabric. So with AMD EPYC Milan using Zen 3, AMD did increase the speed of the Infinity Fabric with those processors, and these are just the Threadripper counterparts. So more than likely, yes, I do expect consumer parts to match that small little upgrade. And if you watched my previous video, I think I spoke about how that's going to take more power. So it's going to be interesting from that perspective to see how much power is left for the cores. So, and then Chagall is named after Marc Chagall or Moishe Chagall, Russian-French artist of Belarusian Jewish origin. I'm not going to show any of his pictures because they're probably all under copyright. But friends with Picasso, and we know that AMD likes using Renaissance painter names, or at least in sort of this sort of time frame. Died in 1985 at the age of 98. Looks like. So yeah, continuing those names. It is what it is. Let's go back up to some more of the questions. What's the deal with Samsung Foundry anyway? I remember a tweet from Andre a while ago saying that they downgraded their 3nm and recently killed another type of 3nm node. So I can actually show you what we wrote at Anantech on this, because I asked Anton to write a news piece. So there was an event at Samsung China, I think. It was like a partner event, and it had this picture, and let's see if I can bring that full screen. But it showed, all the different parts of FinFET going to gate-all-around 3GAP. Now, previously, Samsung has said that 3GAE was going to be the first generation, and it's not on this roadmap, obviously. So a lot of places were reporting that 3GAE is cancelled. We actually reached out to Samsung, and they said, no, it's actually with people looking to go for high volume in 2022. 2022? Yeah, on track for 2022, 3GAE. Though what we now think is that that's purely for internal development for, say, Samsung, their chipset division, rather than anything external. And then 3GAP will be the first external process. So whether they get it right and it's working and get the right density is up to Samsung. So let's back here. If AMD's buy Xilinx, how may it use Xilinx technology in other products? Packaging has been mentioned. I think I've covered this in another video. My impression is that AMD would just leave Xilinx alone for a while, and then simply, when Xilinx sells into, say, 5G and telco, what was previously an Intel-based server will now be an AMD-based server, and that's where they're going to get the initial synergies. Then they're going to work out, well, what works best. Is there merit in putting FPGAs on AMD server platforms by default? Perhaps taking some of the current chips that they have to buy in, like I said earlier, the Lattice FPGA. Perhaps that's worth doing. And then they're going to start looking into more design tactics. I mean, Xilinx, yes, does a lot of packaging work with TSMC, but that's been open to AMD for a while. So I don't think there's that side of the thing. That side of the agreement is really going to take off in the way that most people are expecting, I think. So let's get some coffee down. And a couple of people are asking for a TechTechPotato merch store. It is on the cards. It really is. Any more questions? Small FPGA on the chiplet might come in handy. So the whole point about the chiplet design is that maybe we'd say we'd get graphics on a chiplet and then all sorts of other things. AMD's Trento is going to have a custom I/O die for the supercomputer. That's not Aurora supercomputer, is it? It's Frontier. Frontier supercomputer is getting that custom Milan CPU with a custom I/O die. So people are saying it might have HBM on it, or a Milan version of Milan X might have HBM on it. Nothing which AMD has confirmed. We do know that Sapphire Rapids is getting HBM. The point is the chiplet design was meant to be, open doors. However, AMD hasn't done much with it because they're doing a lot of reuse and redesign. So the Zen 3 chiplets are used across all CPU families apart from the APUs. The I/O dies, into multiple product families. They're not doing very custom configurations yet. Trento is the first, so we'll see how that develops. Which node do they use for DDR4 RAM and SSDs at the moment? Peter Janssen. So I think one of the memory manufacturers just announced, or maybe they all did, that they're now using 1 alpha nanometer, which is generally considered to be 14. But memory is different. So this is like their 6th generation of 10 nanometer class. 10X, 10Y, 10Z, 10 alpha. And they don't say exactly what node it is because they don't want to be compared to each other. So potatoes as a battery. One of the video ideas that I've had that I didn't pass through, but perhaps I could still do. It's just a short video of somebody who's managed to pass their network cable through a potato, and the speeds weren't too bad. And I've got some pictures of how that is as well. Yeah, we'll come to the Steam Deck in a bit, Steez. Somebody's saying, yeah, stream title initially said 10K. There was streaming issues with Streamlabs OBS. I'm now back on normal OBS because that's all set up and how it works. Let's move on to more news. I want to cover this because I think it's interesting. Russia to build RISC-V processors for laptops, 8-core, 2 gigahertz, 12 nanometer in 2025. So this apparently wasn't meant to be announced. I've got an email chain with the CEO of Syntacore finding out exactly what's going on. So the idea is that Rostec, which is the Russian state-backed corporation specializing in investment in technology, has penned a deal. I think I need to edit this slightly because has now said that a server company called Yadro, they will buy servers from Yadro, or they will buy systems from Yadro if they're built with RISC-V processors, and Yadro is working with Syntacore to design that silicon. The number quoted in the Russian media was 30 billion rubles or 400 million US for 60,000 systems, though that's been disputed exactly where those numbers come from. Though 8-core RISC-V processor running at 2 gigahertz using a 12 nanometer process. So one of the questions with RISC-V is always, when is it ready for laptop use? When is it ready for system use? Current RISC-V processors are only several hundred megahertz, so 2 gigahertz is a bit of a jump. Also onto a 12 nanometer process. Would this be Global Foundries? I've said it's probably Global Foundries, though a couple of people pointed out, that it could be, SMIC, UMC, or something else entirely. Could be one of Samsung's older process nodes. So, I don't know where I'm wearing these. So, yeah, it's quite far away, 2025. What's that, 4 years? This is just how long things take. I've said things about running Linux on RISC-V. There are versions of Linux now running on RISC-V, and even Syntacore's own processors, they've said, fully feature memory subsystem with Linux support. The question is whether more mainline Linux distros will be supported. But then again, it is Russia. They could do something like China and run their own custom Linux. Lots of Chinese systems run Kylin, which is a fork of Linux or Android or something like that. So, and this is mainly for government server education systems. So, the thing is, Russia has multiple CPU designs on the go. I've pointed out in this this paragraph here. They have the Elbrus 2000 family of processors. I've actually done a video on those because they announced a new one last year. You can see that on the channel in the back catalog. There's also one called Baikal, which is running MIPS, and that's built by a supercomputer company. So lots of things going on in Russia, lots of things going on in China. Interesting silicon stuff. I don't know, I find it interesting. The fact that these are really difficult to procure for somebody like me. Sorry, excuse me. The Elbrus processor, I was quoted about $2,000 to get what is basically a desktop, which, yeah, I wouldn't know necessarily what to do with. I think Vincent came in. Hi, Vincent. Good to see you. And yes, in Soviet Russia, computer uses you. Let's see, any other questions? I know some people are asking questions that are pretty big topics, like photonic processors. If you watch my interview with Rich Ulig from Intel Labs, they're actually doing integrated photonics, which is basically next generation QPI. That's quite interesting. Though photonic processors are a bit of a way off. There's a company called Light Matter. They did a presentation at Hot Chips last year about their technology. They've got another presentation at Hot Chips this year where they're using waveguides to do machine learning with photonics. So it's going to be that sort of very dedicated CPU processor, ASIC for photonics and stuff like that, for AI, machine learning, stuff like that, before we ever get to general purpose. And I believe a lot of some companies also use it for network switching as well, because it does well with that. ASN, regular consumer workloads that use AVX 512. No, not that many. Best place to look is Intel reviews, because Intel knows all the software that uses AVX 512. So I've got Y Cruncher, I've got a benchmark that I've made, Topaz Labs, NAMD latest beta, compiled in ICC, does. I believe there's a Handbrake version now, maybe using AVX 512. Yeah. It's still limited. It's still limited. So PT Jansen, do you think that FPGA could be useful for graphics cards if they can package it well, maybe for ray tracing? So I think I mentioned before, but like 5 years ago at Mobile World Congress, I saw Imagination Technologies, IMG, who make the Power VR GPUs. They had an FPGA on a custom board running ray tracing, and they were doing 300 million rays per second 5 years ago, before it was a glint in Nvidia's eyes, I guess. So the thing with that is you have to know the scene in order to ray trace it, unless you're doing post-processing ray tracing, which is more difficult. So what do you think about Russia using RISC-V? It's an open standard. They can use whatever they like. A question earlier about x86. Now that some of the patents are up, would anybody be making an x86 CPU? Russia could. Magic.Ian92 asks, will HBM replace both DRAM and VRAM in the future? No. Still way too expensive. Comet SX asks, is 3D crosspoint technology still being developed? Developed, probably yes. Manufactured, probably no. Lord EC says TSMC interchip cooling info. So that was part of the ISTI conference that I was actually a part of. I didn't see the presentation myself. I have all the slides. The reason why you're hearing about it now, 3-4 weeks after the event, is because TSMC reached out to press with the slide deck, some slides. But yeah, so Noitek asks, what about EU Silicon? Are they going RISC-V node fabs? Thanks. I believe you're talking about the SciPearl supercomputing project. That's going ARM. That's going ARM. I think they already announced they're doing V2 processors. So let's see. Okay, let's go on to perhaps a topic that a few of you have been asking for. Let's talk about SteamDeck, because it's a really stupid name. I was listening to the WAN show this morning on my way to market. So fabulous thing. I actually listened to a few YouTube podcasts during the week, and I find the best way, now that I have YouTube Premium, is that I can now turn my screen off and still listen to it. So when I'm walking along, I can listen to WAN show. I listen to PC World, full nerd. Jeff at Craft Computing, Tech Deals, and a couple of others sometimes as well. Epos Fox. It's really fun. So yeah, on the WAN show, they were talking about how this is just a stupid name, SteamDeck. Oh, I meant to say it right, and I said it wrong. It's such a bad name. I mean, it's not even a deck, is it? It's a handheld. A few names have been potted about, calling it the Gabe Boy or something like that. I think Linus is right. Gabe putting his name in wouldn't be a good idea, but SteamDeck just isn't the right name. Other than the name, it's yet one of these handheld portable gaming PCs that we're seeing, rather than it being like a Nintendo DS or one of the cheap £50 ones from AliExpress. It's like GPD Win, it's like the Aya Neo, there was that 1X player and such. I like the fact that it's got buttons on the back along with the 2 triggers. Triggers are analog, thumbsticks, D-pad. I'm not a big fan necessarily of these touch screens. Let's see if we can, not here, just under the analog sticks. Here, these 2 bits. I'm never a big fan of those. As long as it's grippy. That being said, I'm not sure if I'm going to get one. I currently watch a lot of Super Mario Maker on YouTube. A couple of the speedrunners there, they're currently doing 1,000 level no-skip expert. And it's great fun to watch. I thought about picking that up, but do I want something like this? I don't know. So whereas the Aya Neo runs Windows, this one runs SteamOS, but you can install Windows on it. Base design, 64 gigabytes of eMMC. These are the UK prices. So these include the 20% tax. So 256 gigabytes NVMe SSD, 512 gigabytes NVMe SSD pricing. Don't get this one. You don't want that one at all. That being said, it's going to be the earlier one. All models include a micro SD slot for additional storage capability. So one person on the WAN show did suggest that Linus do a video on game loading and game performance while running from a micro SD card. That actually isn't a bad idea. The thing is, this is probably eMMC 5.0, so you have to make sure you have a micro SD card that performs, kind of around there. But yeah, no, NVMe is probably going to be the way to go. Thing is, 256 gigabytes. What's that? 2 AAA games, if that. So, running a custom AMD processor. I've got the spec sheet as another slide. I'll do that then. But Zen 2 plus RDNA 2. That's where the beauty is going to be. Steam library. So because it is running Linux, any game that has copy protection is going to have issues. I think I heard, again, on one show, 4 out of the top 10 games won't run properly. They did say that it's an M.2 2230 slot, though it's not an upgradable M.2 2230. I think that's because it's either single-sided or they've done something with it. But these things, if it's IP water resistant, then it's going to be hard to take apart. It's designed not to be removed. So, anti-cheat, not DRM. Yeah. Jeff says, confirm the storage is user replaceable. Yeah, I'm going to think they're going to make this a bugger to actually get into. But here's the main page, SteamDeck.com, not StreamDeck.com, because that's something different. All-in-one game PC looks like this. Yeah, people with small hands might have issues, but that's what it's meant to be. Power on, sign in. One of the issues with Steam is always online access. This is Wi-Fi, it's not mobile, so you're going to have to be alongside an access point or Wi-Fi. Start shipping to United States, Canada, EU, and United Kingdom. They've not included the UK in the EU and Brexit. Oh. Yeah, perhaps not a topic for Brexit, but hardware. So this is where we should have all the fun. Comfort. 7-inch touchscreen. So 1280 by 800. So if you actually look at the £50 emulator type machines that you get on AliExpress, they also run 1280 by 800 screens, usually bad panels. These will probably at least be IPS. It's a bit too cheap for OLED, but that's what it is for the battery. You when you're playing at that distance and that resolution, yeah, you might be able to see it, but let's see. Everything you need. So fast storage. They're saying the 256 gig NVMe SSD is faster than but the 512 is fastest. That might simply be because with SSDs, the 256 probably has one chip package and the 512 has two. So that's all to do with parallelism. Though chances are it actually runs an SLC cache. So hi-fi audio, embedded DSP. Well, yeah. Actually, everything has an embedded DSP. It just depends on how well it plays. 40 watt hour battery. So that's comparable to most thin and light laptops. USB-C jack, Wi-Fi, fast suspend. There's the micro SD card. Hopefully they'll support the 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte ones, and then there's a dock. Where are the... Oh, okay, here are the tech specs. My bad. So, microphone here. Trackpad, volume, headphone jack, Type-C port, one Type-C port, which is also your charger. So your charging cable is going to be on the top. On the top or on the bottom? What's the best way there? So here we go. AMD APU. CPU is Zen 2 4-core 8-thread, 204 to 3.5 GHz. GPU 8 RDNA 2. Compute units. APU power 4 to 15 watts. So this happens to line up with the APU we believe is called Van Gogh. Now, if you don't know what Van Gogh is, maybe I should say Van Gogh or Van Gogh. If you want to say it in Dutch, then I believe it's Van Gogh. So bonus points if any of you who do any other outreach video-wise, if you say Van Gogh, plus 1 point to you. So the main difference with these processors and with the Zen 2 based APUs is going to be the fact that no longer we have Vega, we have RDNA 2. There is some talk that this processor was initially designed for Microsoft for the Surface, though Microsoft didn't pick it up in the end. They went with simple Renoir. Instead, Valve seems to have picked it up. So what AMD's custom silicon design division is meant to do is create lots of these little different APUs and CPUs to go into systems like this. So we've seen with the AMD Fireflight in the Subor Z+, we've seen the cut down Jaguar processors in the Chewy Aerobox. There's this 4700S desktop system that's apparently going around, which is also sort of semi-custom, running on GDDR memory. This one's running LPDDR5, 16 gigs. So the fact that LPDDR5 in this regard isn't in full volume for mobile processors is good. I mean, the fact that it isn't out yet means that this aligns better with end of the year. And then 5500 mega transfers per second, dual channel. At some point, I'm not saying now, we're going to have to stop saying dual channel, because you're dealing with 64 bits per channel on desktops and 16 bits per channel on mobile platforms, and others use 32 bits per channel. We're going to, at some point, I think, have to move from saying single dual channel to just saying how many bits wide the whole interface is, or just talk about bandwidth. And I 100% guarantee this will be JDEC specifications. So if you're hoping for some fancy CAS latency 16 memory, nah, this will be JDEC. This will be CAS latency 40, 42, probably. I haven't seen the official specs of LPDDR5, the JDEC specs. If anybody has those, please do share. Oh, and here we have the memory speeds, or the storage speeds. 64 gigs of eMMC running at PCIe Gen 2x1, then PCIe Gen 3x4 for the NVMe. Though the high-speed NVMe, because two packages, it'd be interesting to see if they are using SLC cache. Socketed 2230 M.2 modules, not intended for user replacement. And the high-speed micro SD card slot, PCIe Gen 2x1. So if any reviewers out there, I know Jeff's in the chat, maybe Hardware Unboxed is still here. If you go into your motherboard, you can, some of them options, you can downrate your PCIe 3x1 slots to PCIe 2x1. Do that, then stick a NVMe SSD in an add-in card on that, and that's how you'll get your performance. So, and then, yeah, haptics, LNR buttons, view menu buttons, assignable grip buttons, 6-axis, so we'll be doing some of that tilt. I'll be honest, I've never really played a proper system with tilt. Even with the 6-axis stuff, I never really played many, if any, games with it. And since, doesn't one or two of the Wii's do some sort of 6-axis? So 1280 by 800 pixels, like we said, IPS, 7-inch diagonal, 400 nits. I think this is a little low. 600 nits might have been better. Refresh rate of 60 hertz. It doesn't say here what they're speccing the color gamut of the display. So it'll be interesting to see how accurate the colors are, whether they're going to blow out reds, blow out blues, whether they're going to go for a slightly cheaper panel. But yeah, 7 inches roughly probably the right size for that resolution. I mean, don't forget, internally you could render at 1080p and then downscale, but this is primarily going to be for battery life. Bluetooth 5, dual band, Wi-Fi radio, AC, so that's Wi-Fi 5. It's good that it's 2.2. It's a shame it's not AX. This coming out end of year, AX would be ready. Audio, stereo with embedded DSP. This says next to nothing until we actually know what the DSP audio codec is, really. 45-watt USB Type-C power delivery 3 power supply. This is good because I have lots of laptops that are now USB Type-C power delivery based. This will charge those, hopefully. 40-watt-hour battery, 2 to 8 hours of gameplay. 2 hours is a little low. At least you're not buying batteries every other day, like I had to with the good old Game Boy and Pokemon Blue. Pokemon Blue forever. And then USB-C DisplayPort 1.4 up to 8K 60. Yeah, don't expect to run any games on that. 4K 120, USB 3.2 Gen 2. With Steam, the way it is, I wonder if having a USB attached NVMe drive to that port and then using some double-sided tape for the back. So something like the ROG Aerion and an NVMe SSD, double-sided tape that to the back, stick it in. You've got your additional storage. Then SteamOS. So yeah, that's kind of where we are on the Steam Deck. I haven't had a look at this software page. It's just SteamOS, isn't it? Steam Chat. You're not really going to chat. Who uses Steam Chat these days? Steam Library. Yeah. Oh, a new Steam operating system. So new version comes with Proton, a compatibility layer that makes it possible to run your games without any porting work needed from developers. So yeah, that's that. I did miss a few super chats. I'm sorry. Brian, $10. LPDDR5 has an I/O throughput up to 6,400 megatransfers per second, according to JDEC. Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Brian. Throughput up to 6,400, but this is using 5,500. So I wonder what the cache latency is there. And there was a couple of super chats. I'm sorry, I did see them. Gaunter, can you do a video explaining through silicon vias? I perhaps could. Maybe not to the detail you might be expecting. Planet 886, thanks again for the 150 Taiwanese. Do you think about Intel pushing for a Unicode chip emoji? Coincidence that they tweeted while you were streaming. That'd be great. Though, as long as it's a universal chip emoji. I have had an issue recently of companies saying they're on the leading edge, but then using B-roll of 15-year-old, 10-year-old chips. And people are saying, why do you care? And me saying, well, imagine if Ford said we're at the bleeding edge of car design and then showing, a 1974 banger. If you're in Intel marketing and you do an Intel marketing video and you use the old logo, you're going to get written up. Or whatever it is they do at Intel when you do something wrong. But if you use the old chip, nobody seems to notice. I think chips are just, for people like me, they're as identifiable for era as logos. So I don't know, a few people have been asking questions. I don't know if I'm going to get a Steam Deck. So I don't really have much time for games on my PC anyway. So I don't really do much. When I do have free time, I'm either watching YouTube, browsing Imgur, or watching TV with the family, watching Netflix or something. So Tweedle says, can we talk about Bergamo? Only if you can confirm anything about it. So for people who don't know, Bergamo is meant to be the code name for Zen 4 based Epic, I think. I don't know. I don't pay attention to that sort of stuff until there's official announcements. I mean, really, AMD hasn't really said anything about Van Gogh or Chagall, so we know that those things are coming. And as it gets closer to time, you can plot out the roadmap And that's when I get interested. When it's, these sorts of, that sort of talk, I don't really get involved. Why is this Steam Deck blowing up so much more compared to GPD? Because GPD is a Japanese company, I believe, limited distribution, and the point about it is it's from Valve, so people understand the company. GPD, it's so one of these things about these Chinese companies that are doing them, like Ioneo, like the 1X player. You don't know if they're going to be around next year. You don't know if they're going to get updates. You don't know if there's going to be driver support for your APU, CPU, GPU, or whatever. You don't know if you're going to get remote support. At least with Valve, there's going to be some support. Now, because it's Valve, the project might be cancelled in a year, but at least it's a product that goes out. So, it's did they say something about FreeSync? Total Shandon 1997. No, I think you saw in the tech specs. No, it just said 60 hertz. Really, you do want something like FreeSync on here. No doubt something like this will also, take advantage of AMD's FSR. So, Tim says 120 hertz would have been nice. Yeah, then you come against the battery issue. If they're quoting 2 hours for the low-end battery with these specifications, then you have to think, well, if they went from 60 hertz to 120 hertz, maybe you only get an hour. So, Matthew says Breath of the Wild has a few 6-axis puzzles. I've not properly played a Zelda since Link to the Past on the SNES, so... And Peter Jansen says he hates JDEC. It is what it is. Peter says, sorry, your pronunciation of Van Gogh was not 100% correct, but a good attempt. I was told by a Dutchie I was correct. Andrew says, I'd like to ask you what your favorite chips/fries are, and why are they McDonald's? No. If you get a proper British chunky chip, twice or three times cooked, I don't like them really. I know some people love them really crispy. I don't like them that crispy. That or a good tater tot, though I think, as I've said before, the UK doesn't actually have tater tots. So I have to get them when I go to the US. And I haven't been to the US in ages. So, Rarefaction, what are your thoughts on the Fujitsu X64FX's influence on the Apple Silicon M1 range? There is no influence. They're both doing their own unique thing. For those who don't know, Fujitsu X64FX is the processor that's in the #1 supercomputer at Riken in Japan. They used an ARM architecture license and built their own chip that's a massive vector engine with lots of L1 performance. They were first used ARM's scalable vector extensions, which is like AVX, but for ARM, but done a lot better, let's say. And we did actually have a chance to play with some X64FXs at an Antec, but we couldn't really do anything with them because we didn't know how to use them. It's so far outside of our sphere of regular, use. And then, comparing that to the Apple M1, it's not worth a comparison, really. Mikkel Svensson, thanks for the 50 Danish kroner. Congrats on 50k. Thoughts on future EUV light sources? Kilowatt scale, FEL, do you reckon they'll be required for double patterning EUV to be economical? So I can answer some of this. Future EUV light sources, on my chat with Jim Keller, he was already speaking about X-ray. Exactly how those are developed, we didn't discuss. Current way of doing EUV is that you vaporize droplets of tin, you fire it with a high-powered EUV light source to essentially vaporize it to get the right shape of droplet. Then you fire it with another burst again, and that's what generates the EUV that needs to go and make your chips. So beyond that, we're probably at least... Jim Keller said he was a few years away. I think he was getting confused between that and high numerical aperture EUV, which has actually just been delayed by a year, I think. So we're actually going to have to wait till 2024, 2025 for that. With regards light sources, kilowatt scale, yes. Those who don't follow that technology, current EUV machines have a 350, 400 watt light source to essentially deliver millijoules per square centimeter of energy. But because of the wavelength of light needed, it's all complex, but you essentially need to keep scaling the power, and they become very power hungry. As far as we are with double patterning EUV, we could do that now. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the next batch. Back with, I can't remember which video it was, but I did a small cut of Jim Keller presentation where he's talking about how to design the X's on DUV than EUV, and we're actually only a little way along the EUV spectrum, so there's a few generations to go to scale down. Question is getting it there. Somebody asked, why are you so sleep deprived? This is just the way I look. Actually, this morning I woke up at 4 a.m. and it's now half 5 p.m. Yeah. I don't know. I believe some YouTubers have makeup before they go on camera. I try and shave and do my hair and make sure I wear a t-shirt that's not got stains on it. So I'd love to sleep more, not enough time. Will we see Hackintosh for SteamDeck? Probably not. Do you think that SteamDeck will run in high power, low power mode, plugged in versus battery? With a 45 watt battery, with a 45 watt input power, then yeah, we'll be running high performance. Whether that means going up to 15 watts or not, unsure. They've said 4 to 15 watt for the APU. I believe the Van Gogh APUs were meant to be around 9 watts. So maybe it's 15 in some circumstances, maybe it's 15 in turbo, maybe it's 4 if you put it into a special low power mode. Interesting to see what happens there. So yeah. Maybe they wanted to call it the Stream JDeck, but weren't allowed. I'm pretty sure. Give me 24 hours, and I think I could definitely come up with a better name. Kizbiz asks, what camera setup are you rocking? I've got a GH5, G85. It's given one name in the US and one name in the UK. I think Jeff asked earlier as well, what do I think of the camera? It works. I mean, it's 4 years old. I bought it brand new as well, just because I just wanted to make sure it worked. I'm still using the kit lens. It's a bit of a hassle to set up with the microphone and everything. Finally got all my cables from my machine to my camera ended up being like 3 inches too short. And rather than having stretch out, I had to spend another few days waiting for Amazon to deliver cables. So yeah, I haven't taken it out for proper photography. I actually also bought a G3, which is like 10 years old, for out and about photography, for holidays and stuff. So I don't do a lot of B-roll because I'm bad at it. Rarefaction, going back to the Fujitsu versus Apple Silicon, there are a lot of borrowed ideas. No, because Apple would have been designing the M1 at the same time Fujitsu was building the A64FX. I think that because the design cycles are so long, even if stuff comes out a year apart, the thing that comes after is arguably not going to be influenced by the thing that comes before. Maybe in tweaking, but not in design. And even then, A64FX versus M1, different markets. And what is the Tweedle asks, what is the Fujitsu supercomputer used for? So I know they did a bit of COVID simulation on it. It's replacing the current system at Riken that was used for a lot of academic work. So anything academic, really. Steez is talking about the SteamDeck M.2, saying so if it's easy to upgrade. I don't think it's going to be easy to upgrade. More questions about vectors and RISC-V and AVX. I don't know that much about it. I think you're confusing me a little bit. Manjil Ral, thanks for the US $5. No message, but thank you very much. Meltdown Spectre asks, how far are we from using graphene as a semiconductor? Quite far away. It's actually a video I wanted to do about... so TSMC did a paper which got erroneously covered in the press as saying 1 nanometer. It wasn't. It was more to do with the connections between a 2D transistor and the gate or bulk material. And it was to do with how electron orbitals overlap. And if you did a plot on the performance or the scaling factor, it could be used for 1 nanometer. But that was, we're going to see, if we're going to use 2D transistors, they'll be embedded in silicon, and they won't be graphene, not quite yet. People reacting to my sleeping comment. Somebody saying eat salmon. I don't eat fish, really. I mean, I don't like the taste. I do kind of sometimes eat prawns. English fish and chips I will eat from time to time. Fish fingers I will eat from time to time, but they don't really taste like fish, and I started them in sauce anyway. But proper fish, no, not really. And then, yeah, I did watch Seaspiracy. I did come away thinking, well, I'm not going to eat fish unless it's line caught, which is fair enough. But then I don't eat that much fish anyway, and you can't line catch prawns, I guess. I don't know. We don't eat that much fish in this household anyway. Vitamin D. I'm doing more walking these days because I've put on a bit of a gut in lockdown. Put on too much weight. I need to lose some weight. You need a mod to delete the hateful comments. I don't actually have any mods on the channel yet, so. Lord DiCapo, thank you for the $5. I love your level of coverage. Have you heard of the Ascenium processor? If so, what are your thoughts? The Ascenium processor, was it last week, said that they were coming out with a where you have CISC, complex instruction set architecture, and RISC, reduced instruction set architecture. You now have the NISC, no instruction set architecture. That's what Ascenium are trying to do. I'm not too confident because you still have to have some form of instructions. I mean, literally, if you go into their presentation, they're talking about having a compiler which compiles for their processor, but it's a mid-level compiler, so it still so you get what you do your code, say you do some C code, gets converted into assembly, then it gets put through their compiler or whatever, and you have to have instructions. There's maybe no instruction set architecture is the bad way to phrase it, because you still have to have some direction. Otherwise, you're just sending data down the pipe, right? You have to say, add these two together. it's not, you can't just have some sort of eminent intelligence from a stream of data like that. So Ascenium, I think, and the chip that they're building, it's meant to be a reconfigurable CPU, which kind of sounds like an FPGA, but they're saying, no, it's not an FPGA because we're doing it differently. So if Ascenium want to showcase what they're doing, present our hot chips next year. I'm skeptical. That's what I'm saying here is I'm skeptical. Now, I reported on what was VISC, which was reported as reverse hyperthreading, but not. The company that was Soft Machines, that was purchased by Intel, and we've never heard from them again. I wrote that up, and I even went to their headquarters in Santa Clara to speak about their technology, and I wrote that up, and I was very wary of that. This is even more abstract than Soft Machines. So, I'm going to be, until I see some hard data, some presentation, some understanding, which they're not going to talk about yet because they're still, early startups. So, people suggesting names: Steam Station, Steam 360 US, US XS, Steam 360. I have to sit down, and I like to think I'm quite good with naming, despite what Linus says. But I have a process, and it's a process of emptying your mind and letting random things come to you. Verticalo asks, did you do the Erasmus program while you're in uni? Nope. I just did straight 4-year undergrad masters. Radix29 asks, Global Foundries bought by Intel. Rewind, and you'll hear what I have to say about that. I'm sorry, I can't read. I can't read the Israeli script. But the guy says, hi, Ian. As a Triple E student at Tel Aviv, I get a lot of inspiration from your videos. Wanted to ask, how big is the chip market in Israel compared to other countries? Quite big, because Intel's there, and there's a lot of AI startups there as well. I've dealt with Israeli startups that were started from ex-Israeli special forces. Those are fun conversations. Search for Ian Cutress, AMD Floors, David Cantor for a very fun conversation about a company that supposedly found a load of flaws in media chipsets and tried to pin it on AMD. Chris, are you calling me posh? DeFreak, any news on replacement DRAM NAND insights like NRAM from Nantero, Hot Chips 2019? So, along with speaking to Fujitsu about the A64FX time, we did ask to speak about the Nantero, because they not acquired, but sort of did a special collaboration with them. And they said that Nantero, that sort of technology was going to be presented later in the year. This was last year in a conference in Q4. Though that they reached out to me to say that didn't happen, and they're planning for another conference in 2021. I haven't seen it yet, and I like to think I'm at least cognizant of all the major semiconductor conferences now. It's Michael asks, any thoughts or comments on Intel interesting Global Foundry? Again, that was one of the first things we talked about on the video. Jack says I should get at least 7 hours sleep. So yesterday was... after I went to my grandfather's funeral on Thursday, I slept in Friday for about 12 hours because it was... You know how we've all been in the pandemic or been in lockdown for ages? That was my first proper all-day social interaction. And I'm one of these people who recharges battery from being asleep and being, in my own space. So that drained me a lot of battery. So I slept for 12 hours. And then naturally, if you sleep that long, the next day you end up sleeping less. And it also meant, because today is 30 degrees, what does my thermometer say? 30.5 degrees in my office right now. Yeah, it meant that I could get out and walk to market, which is what I usually do on a Saturday morning, and at about 8 a.m. So nice and cool. Frederico says, why do you do this live at the same time, the F1 classification? Because it's literally the only time I'm going to get today. And I'll catch the F1 later, as I always do. Stefan Payne asks, isn't that what Transmeta did back in the days when they had an on-chip compiler thingy or so? So that was bitwise translation, and you still you're still converting a program with instructions to a program with instructions. It's kind of like what Apple's Rosetta does. So translation from one ISA to another is different from having a completely no instruction set architecture. Though, yeah, what they produced was like a translation layer, which, that Ascentium processor. Noitek says, walking is the best treatment for the whole body. Yes, highly suggested that if you can get out for 40 minutes walking, get in at least 6,000 steps. I do it to clear my head. The problem is when I go on walks like that, I tend to spend most of my time thinking, and I do think a lot about work and videos, but it means that I think about different ideas for new videos I want to do. Unfortunately, I already have 15 ideas of videos that I want to do, and it's taking me too long to get to them. So, yeah, danger with that. So that's why you listen to podcasts or something, because then it keeps you out of your own mind. So I always get ideas. There was talk about semiconductor cooling. TSMC did the paper, about channel cooling with MEMS. It's still a long way from production. It really is. It's been talked about for decades. So, Medi Mido asks, AMD 4700S review anytime soon. If anybody can get hold of a 4700S desktop system, please let me know. We do have some budget. So we would be willing to, reach out and pay you for your assistance if you're able to source one, and send it our way. The problem is whenever there's a new system, I always take ages to review it. So I've still got like a Tremont Atom notebook, which I actually bought over a month ago now. I still need to actually do a video on that. I never did get around to the Subor Z Plus. Finally pushing out a dual Ice Lake Xeon review next week, hopefully, on an Antec. ASN asks, what are your views on the IBM Power architecture? Not so much the architecture itself. I do like their open CAPI memory interface because that's really versatile. But it looks like CXL is going to do pretty much the same thing, kinda. RWA74 says, would you accept an AMD, Intel, Nvidia sponsorship? Now, if you're speaking about either an ad or a video sponsorship, I don't think I'm in a position where I would, because that would really, really confuse or complicate all my work with an Antec. So because the written media is so different to video media, Linus does a video on Intel, then the next video is a review of an Intel product. If I did a sponsored video with Intel, say, I don't think an Antec would let me write about Intel ever again. that's kind of how that operates there. So I think the people who I'm talking to now with ad spots, they're general, software technology things, like the videos recently with Linode. Speaking to one kind of big company that I don't really write about ever, but they're still big, about doing a sponsored video sometime soon. One of the issues is actually having to understand how much I'm worth, because I think I'm quite bad at negotiating that sort of thing. That sort of thing where you really need a business manager dealing with that. So, Nicholas asking about fabs etching GAA and nanosheets. That's a very complicated question. I don't think I'll cover it in this video. 10100 RSN asks, thoughts on the TPM? What is it? Schrodinger's black box of encryption? Is the NSA inside? It's just meant to be a hardware protection layer. I think the key thing here is not to focus so much on the TPM itself. Look to the future with Microsoft Pluton. So Pluton is going to be kind of like TPM, but Microsoft's kind of version of it. And it's going to be built into every Intel, AMD, and Qualcomm future processor, or any processor that plans to run Windows. It's going to be built into that. And that, I think, is what this TPM requirement is leading into. Do search Microsoft Pluton and get some details. Maybe I can bring up my article that I did on it a while ago, November. Yeah, so I wrote this in November. Microsoft Pluton hardware coming to CPUs. All about reducing your attack surface. People say, well, if you put the security in the hardware, if there's a 0 day, is it easy to break? Well, that's the same thing for any hardware-based. But we've seen things like Google Titan, which is an additional hardware chip. Apple has its, was it T1, T2? Excuse me, hardware chips. And Pluton is, also talking about cloud, chip-to-cloud security, making sure you have a full end-to-end. But do read through this. It's all three companies announced, though we're probably going to have to wait until end of 2022 before the first processors with this technology come out. So it's that's what TPM is building up for. I think, don't get too hung up on TPM. Let's read more questions. It's because TechTechPotato, I will point out the crisps that I'm eating, if you've seen me. These are the Karma Bites. I actually had these on the last stream. Wasabi flavor. Pick these up. £1.50 a bag. Recently, I've also been eating this sort of seaweed tapioca type crisps. They've been really nice. The problem with eating on stream is how you put things in your mouth, and it's impolite to talk with your mouth full. That's why people drink beer or cocktails on stream, like Jeff does. So I did bring with me these, not technically crisps, ding dongs, hot and spicy mixed nuts. So if you're in the US, this is not a chocolate covered freezer, moon pie, whatever thing. This is just a bag of mixed nuts called ding dongs, which I got at my local Japanese plastic craps shop called Miniso. It's a pound? I don't know. Yeah, eating on stream isn't that great. I do apologize. My chat keeps running up and down. Joshua Herman, $5. Thank you for the super chat. What is the tastiest wafer you have ever eaten? I need to eat more wafers. IBM said I could chow down on their 2nm, but I need to get there first. We'll see. And I think, as I said before, I'm a big sucker for the Cerebrus one. So wafer scale wafers is always good. Tweedle says I can find a 4700S for you. Yep, reach out. Email TechTechPotato@gmail.com. Evyatar Cohen says, about special forces in Israeli companies, all Israeli citizens have to serve in the army. Okay, yeah, kind of sounds like Russia and Finland as well. Stuart says, Raid Shadow Legends is the only sponsor. Or, you know, the thing, Jeff always says that Raid is not a backup. Dominico, hey Dom, how's it going? Actually, do I have them here? So, as much as the Bitcoin craze has been frustrating, Dom sent me some 3D printed coins. That's not going to autofocus, is it? So we have a Dogecoin. It's pretty awesome. And, you know, we have a 3D printed Bitcoin. Can't really see the detail on it. Let me see if I can change the focus. Yeah. It's nice and cool. I want to put them up behind me, but if they're that far away, I don't think people can see them. So, yep. Thanks to Dom for those. Good use of a 3D printer. Matthew asks, ask Linus how much he thinks you should charge for a sponsorship. So I do speak to a few of the bigger YouTubers, you know, above 100K and above 1 mil. You know, they've always said I can reach out to them for information about how much to charge for this sort of thing. So it's yeah, different side to what I'm typically used to dealing with tech media. So make sure you get a percentage of sales from your affiliate links in sponsored videos. Yeah, I mean, I already do the standard Amazon, but because I don't really talk about products you can buy on this YouTube channel, the affiliate links don't really get used. I mean, so there are channels which will dedicate to talking about deals, channels that are dedicated to doing reviews of specific products. I don't do much of that, if any, because if I do a big review of a product, I do it on an Antec, and that's got its own affiliate system. So it's it is what it is. Yeah. Stuart asks, would it be possible to have a virtualized TPM in software? Oh, I don't know. Well, I mean, we already have it in firmware, but that requires hardware support. Maybe you can get a hypervisor to fake one? And if the hypervisor is based on a real one, then yeah, I guess. I don't know. Meltdown Spectre, why don't tech journalists ever call out caution on big tech's ever tightening grip on user freedoms? They do. Go and read the Register. Register's good for that sort of stuff. See if I can... they had a really great title recently. Let's see if I can bring it up. Because it's called Register. The Register. If I search for Register and it doesn't come up properly. No. anyway, it was about Intel rehiring old people, and they said Intel finds a use for old people. Which is quite good like that. I think the main problem with most media is that, at least the media that we talk about, or that I talk about mostly, because tech is such a broad space. When somebody says, "Oh, I talk about tech," 80% of the time they mean smartphones. But then you have hardware technology, you have software technology, you have embedded. You could be talking about mobile, smartphone, infrastructure, gadgets. Usually when it comes to freedoms, you're mainly having to look for the more software-based or more cultural technology focus. Register does a lot of that. Most of the tech journalists that probably you watch and I watch mostly deal with hardware and gaming, maybe a bit of enterprise. That's why it doesn't come up that often. AI Generated Cat said, any idea if Pluton will get incorporated with Alderlake? I don't think it's an Alderlake. John Cutler asks, you tried quinoa chip crisps? Yes, I have. Verticalo says, considering your work is truly international, why have you decided to still have your headquarters in the UK? Born and bred here. My wife works in downtown UK. Her job isn't transferable outside the country. I am 30 minutes away from an airport, so because I travel so much, it's I mean, since I started the channel, I haven't been traveling, so that's going to be interesting to decide where and when I can do videos when I'm traveling. But yeah, no, I'm happy being here in the UK. Sometimes it's an issue with certain companies because I think I said in my journalist ethics video that certain companies are so geo-restrictive that if you're in the UK or if you're in, say, France, you can only work with the UK or the French PR team, not the global PR team, not the US PR team. So it's sometimes an issue like that. And yes, so some people's comments saying ding dongs and they're being cut out. Adam, you didn't need to do $50 super chat, but thank you. Yes, you said the embroidered ones weren't going to be available for too long, so I decided to get one. It did take about 4 or 5 weeks to arrive, so, but it is here. Oh, are they sold out now? So I actually bought a Chain Bear t-shirt as well recently because that was going to charity for Pride Month. Parker asks, do you have a favorite cat breed? No, all cats are good. My chat is going up and down. Could germanium replace silicon for the leading edge? No. Silicon is too abundant and too cheap. Nice Lake asks, was this for your Ice Lake mining? Yeah, so the Dual Xeon server I've actually had since then, and it's taken me a literal age to get around to doing that review because so many other things have come up. Kelly Hughes, thank you for the $25. I'm looking forward to your next milestone, Semper Fi. That's the Marines, isn't it? I think I've seen your picture before. You're an ex-Marine, aren't you? And some people like Shiba Inus. Oh, I see. I'm at the chat where people are just reading the just at the tokens. Sorry, I go through questions quite slowly. Eskimonster says, did Zen 3 not have a TPM issue? I don't think Zen 3 had any issues. Tweedle, my email address is just techtechpotato@gmail.com. Oh, my chat keeps going up and down. Did I just say downtown UK? Yes. Stuart says, "Will your wife be joining any streams?" No, she doesn't. She doesn't like her photo being taken. She was the camera when I did the one video that was outside a few weeks ago. She was holding the camera because I forgot to bring my tripod. Let's see. How far away are we from self-aware computers? At least 20 years. I don't know why, but I've always thought you were Irish for some reason. I could put on a very bad Irish accent. Andrew says, do you have a favorite programming language and editor? I actually spend most of my time writing in AutoHotkey because I do a lot of benchmark automation. And I use SciTE4, so SCITE4 for my benchmarking scripts because that does autocomplete and what have you. Have I ever used GitHub? Only to the sense of downloading some code. Actually, speaking of downloading code, I'm not sure if any of you have seen 3D Mark. The guys over there have a new benchmark called CPU Profile. So I wrote it up on an Antec. I was going to do a video for the channel, but I didn't get around to doing it. It's literally just a CPU test that tests 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 max threads. And what the CPU is testing is this, which is what they call a Boyd simulation. So it's birdoid-like objects doing what's called flocking. So you can see they generally following the same pattern until they reach a bigger group. There's a version here that does about 100. If this will work on stream, there is also a GPU version here that's doing 65,000 bird objects, and you can adjust the separation and cohesion and alignment and bias towards the front birds and all this sort of stuff that I found interesting. The problem with a test, though, is that the CPU seems to only test this, and it's meant to be a measure of gaming, but it's a CPU limited test. And actually in the test, if you actually watch it, it's like this. And so these are these bird-like objects here, these little triangles. There's 300 of them, 400 of them in the test. Now on this processor, this some of the results. So this is the test in a very restricted GIF format. 150 frames, but I don't think it's a great gaming test. Good overclocking test, not so great gaming test. So, little aside, go check that article out. It's great fun. Also go check the test out. So, Cluster 17 says, "Are you still in contact with Anand?" No, not really. Anand and I only ever had a professional relationship, and I think I've spoken to him twice since he left. Once we met for coffee. Another time I emailed him like the day before I was in the area saying, "Hey, do you want to meet up?" And he said, "Sorry, I'm busy." So no, I don't speak to Anand that often at all. So, I mean, it's been what, six years since he left Anandtech. So I've spent longer at Anandtech without Anand than I have been with. So it's So Sorab asks, what's your main PC running, Windows or Linux? Windows, and I also have WSL. Boyd. Yes, lots of Boyds. John asks, have you tried Win 11 yet? What do you think? No, I haven't. I will try Windows 11 when I switch my benchmark suite over to Windows 11, and I think I'll only do that at least 6 to 8 months into it being launched. So it's, yeah, given the issues that Vista had when it came out, and also Windows 10, the problem is always performance. Also, I have an ongoing project with an Antec, which I'm sure most of you might know, called CPU Overload, which isn't showing up on Google because CPU Overload means something else. This project, which is about testing every desktop processor since 2010. The minute I change from Windows 10 to Windows 11, I'm going to have to scrap all this data. So there's 3 stacks of AMD processors. I recently got an intern who's going through about 30 processors a month just on CPU testing. They're doing back-end CPU testing with some of the really older processors right now. If you want to see the data, go to Bench, which is an Antec, and this icon up here. And you see choose first product. And you see here we've got the Mac Mini, we've got the Xbox One SoC, Subor, we've got the Xiaoxin. Again, that's another processor I got, which didn't end up reviewing. Some of these here, some A10s, some of the Ryzen Semprons, then Athlon X2s, some of the FX processors, some of the Phenoms, Ryzens, and then, Intel. We've got some Sandy all the way back. We've got some, Conroe, Sandy Bridge, then, all the generations up to then. We've got some Xeons in here, the V3s, they're the Haswells, I think. I've got lots of Xeons to go through, actually. And then, some mobile processors as well. I've got a few of those to add in. Server CPUs, I've got a bucket load of server CPUs actually to process, probably a good dozen of the AMD ones. Server, I've gone through a number of the Cascade Lake Xeons. I don't have any of the Ice Lake Xeons. No, I do have the Ice Lake Xeons, but they're in this Supermicro system, which I've got to send back. I really need a more permanent solution to that. So we'll see. And then, some of the retail systems here. But if you want to see, Cinebench R20 single thread, you can see all these data points. I think we're at about 140 by now. So yeah, if I switch to Windows 11, I'm going to have to start doing all of that. And it's going to hobble everything before Intel 7th gen, before Zen Plus. So that's why I haven't changed yet. So Nightmare says, heard of GitHub Copilot today. Do you have any opinions on it? I've only heard of it in terms of the fact that I listened to Linus's WAN show on it, and I heard Luke's opinions of it. This sort of AI-assisted coding. Now, I already use an IDE with autocomplete, which an autocomplete just means if it detects the command you're putting in, you can just say complete. Things like PowerShell and just pressing tab. Or Linux just pressing tab. I don't think AI coding can work in that way, because you give 50 people a simple project to do and they'll do it 50 different ways. So people asking, to do another live stream with Wendell. So Wendell and I usually collab on a stream after a big launch, because that's usually where we feel that we have the most to say about things. And it's especially good if we've both tested it. Me saying, without Windows 11, how will I test Alderlake? So for the Alderlake launch review, yes, I'll probably be using Windows 11 for that test. I would also like to do some Windows 10 testing on it, of course. I just realized I'm still showing that screen. Yeah. anandtech.com/bench for that. People saying they've upgraded to Windows 11 and they're on WSL, no problem. That's good to hear. I do want to hear of more people giving it the thumbs up. That's always better. If I don't have enough time to sit there going through trying to debug why my OS is crapping out. I've got reviews and videos and content to make coming out of my ears. I've got spreadsheets of results. Like I said, my intern who's going through CPUs, I'm actually 25 CPUs behind uploading that data to the benchmark database. So I'm happy to let other people run those tests and get through those and see what the thoughts are before I jump in. What do you think of the undocumented x86 instructions in VIA chips that allow privilege escalation? You are talking about, is it Eric Dumas, XOR, EAX, who did the Morphoscator? He also did, he did an application that essentially found instructions that completed on processors that are undocumented. And he mostly worked on really old VIA chips. The point is that every processor, even the one you're running now, has lots of instructions that aren't documented. But also, I think when he was doing that presentation, it was also key to point out that while the instructions completed, it was hard to say if they did any work. So it could just be a case of the CPU accepting a set of instructions or accepting the instructions, some data, but not actually doing anything with it, or it kind of, happily collapsing later on. So that's going to be a problem for everything, for every processor that's ever existed that doesn't have the most simplest instruction set ever. And the thing with Ascentium, with their no instruction set architecture, is they're still going to be vulnerable to that sort of thing. So it's let me see here. Let's go down. Sam, on the Cerebrus wafer scale 2, why do you think they stuck to a rectangular pattern on the wafer instead of using the entire area if they don't have to dice the wafer? Because if it's a rectangular pattern, then you can... The XY layout is easier to manage. If you have a jaggedy pattern with your reticles, you then have to manage your 2D machine learning workload. If you want to use one of those reticles outside of the rectangle, then you have to go up and around and down, and it becomes a lot more complicated for the compiler to use. But Cerebrus's thing is you can also combine multiple wafer scale engines together and do the workload that way as well. And that is much easier if you can apply rectangle to rectangle to rectangle to rectangle, because then you can scale out. If somebody ended up buying 100, or let's just say 64 wafer scale 2s, they can connect them up into one big 2D mesh, which is essentially kind of what TensorTorrent is trying to get people to do. So Verticalo says, lots of people, including me, would love to hear you and Wendell talk about random tech stuff. You don't realize how lonely we are and how less terrible you make our lives. No, so I can assess this. Sometimes I feel down when the people who I regularly watch don't have content I can watch. I appreciate that. I really do. The issue is that Wendell and I are people who are perfectionists enough that say I wanted to do a talk about a research paper. I even polled this on YouTube community, I think, once. If I'm going to do a research paper, I could either sit here and do a 1 to 2 hour live stream, literally going through the paper, you seeing how I'm thinking, how I'm interpreting it. No, it's essentially reacting to the paper live first time. That does one type of content. However, when I polled people, they said, no, do the 10, 20-minute video instead. And the point is, even if I did that sort of 1 2 hour react and condense that down, I don't think the content in those 2 hours could just be clipped. I would want to do a dedicated video on the topic. And that takes time. And you could argue, would I be happier to spend 2 hours doing that, doing a live stream and generating content going over the paper? Or would I be better spent 2 hours reading through the paper myself to move towards a 20-minute video? And the thing is, people like me and Wendell would rather do the latter, because there could be times on stream where I would be reading it for 10 minutes and probably not say anything because I'm going through it in my mind. The other issue there is going through research papers on the stream is that most research papers are copyrighted. So you don't have permission to reproduce research papers, especially ones that are with a journal, for commercial use, which is what it would be on YouTube. You can do it for non-commercial use, for a non-profit, or which is, say, what Learned French can do with lawful masses. But as a commercial enterprise, I have a feeling that if I kept going through research papers and essentially showing them in their entirety as I go through them, reacting live, I would probably get some sort of copyright strike. So it's a trade-off, right? So, and even then, some of the topics that we've covered necessarily on this stream, I don't think I've done justice to the depth of how I would cover them if I did them into a separate video. So, John Carter says, have I heard of the print nightmare bug on Windows? I have heard of it. I haven't researched it into depth. So, let's see. So, reading through more questions. Can you hear my stomach? It has been growling. Gunny says, will there be socket changes for Ryzen 4 5? Do you mean Zen 4, Zen 5? Yes. Most likely. You guys need to relax a bit, breathe in, breathe out. What content do I watch that isn't computer related from Crazy Logic? Well, I said I watch a couple of people literally online just play Super Mario Maker 2, Pangaea Panga mostly, and a little bit of Grand Pooh Bear, and that's basically taking their streams and they're clipping it for YouTube. But they post like a 40-minute video a day, and they get over 100,000 views. I watch it; it's fun. I'm also subscribed to task videos, tool-assisted speedruns. I like watching those. I like understanding how people deconstruct the games to try and find glitches and bugs and exploits for TASes. I don't watch much RTA speedrunning, so real-time speedrunning, but actual people controllers. Though I do sometimes watch videos about the progression of how certain games speedrunning has improved. Carl Jobst does a few of them on, he's done ones recently on GoldenEye and Minecraft. There's a fair few people, Summoning Salt, I think, does some good ones on the original Super Marios. things like that. Etienne, channel called Etienne, does some on Guitar Hero. I used to really enjoy Guitar Hero back in the day. I used to watch a lot of Tom Scott. I don't anymore. Personally, I think his videos have got a bit samey, as in it's interesting aside difference, but not a lot of depth. I'm getting to a point now where if I want to learn about a topic, I want to learn about it deeply. I already know too much crap about lots of little topics. I much rather prefer to understand something a little bit deeper. Yeah. And the usual number file, computer file, the chemistry one with Professor Martin Polyakov. That's quite interesting sometimes, though. Again, that can be I like it when they've got Professor Polyakov reacting to news like Nobel Prizes or new research. The generic day-to-day videos don't catch me in the same way as they used to. And then, I also watch a lot of familiar stuff like Top Gear replay videos, and have I got news for you? Mock the Week. I do like a lot of panel show and comedy. What's the one with? I can't think now. Used to be presented by Drew Carey, now Aisha Tyler, Ryan Stiles, Colin Mockfree. Used to be a Clive Anderson in the UK ages and ages ago. I like watching those. It's I like my comedy. John Cutler asks, do you think the UK could improve its tech sector and manufacturing? Not really. I had a discussion with a great uncle of mine about Cambridge being the Silicon Valley of the UK, but then kind of there's parts of East London trying to be the Silicon Valley of the UK, and then there's investment in the north of England. Cambridge has ARM, though ARM, when they got acquired by SoftBank, said, we're going to triple the headcount, at least double, if not triple the headcount in Cambridge. And the thing is, that area doesn't have the infrastructure for that many people. Cambridge is an expensive place to live anyway. And even the satellite villages and towns with house prices increasing in the UK so high, it's stalled. It's tough. It's tough. And any government assisted program pushing in that direction, it's a lot of talk and there's no evidence of commitment in that way. So what it requires is, in Japan, the big conglomerates there, like Toyota, they have like Toyota City, where it's literally the same with Huawei in China. You have essentially a company builds an entire town. And, it still has roads and schools and stuff, but pretty much everyone in the town works at the factory, at the company. We don't have anything like that in the UK, really. Maybe in certain places in Scotland, like Sellafield, maybe, where we keep all the nuclear power. Oh, no, Sellafield isn't in Scotland, is it? Scotland's where we keep the tactical nukes. So... Andrew says, in the computer world, what interests you most aside from hardware, CPUs, GPUs, and gaming? Semiconductor technology. Gaming, I've gone off the boil recently. I mean, I used to be a really, really big Final Fantasy fan, played all the games. Now, these days, I mostly just play idle games. So... Nicholas says, do you think China will have their own ASML? No. If you want a company like ASML, you should have started it 30 years ago. And even then, ASML's partners are so unique in their field that you have to build up a whole new infrastructure unless you're going to work with them already. So, hi Carlos from Portugal in New York. See, Ultra Veridical. How many CPU makers go into segment full EC support for consumer and server CPUs that support DDR5? Currently, Ryzen support ECC in UDIMMs. Oh, I never did a video about Ryzen and ECC support. So the problem is Ryzens aren't qualified for ECC. AMD says you can try and enable it. We haven't verified it, and if it works, good for you. Thing is, most of the motherboard manufacturers have the same philosophy. It's not qualified, but we say it's there, you can enable it, and if it works, good for you. The thing is, when you have a system with a Ryzen chip, you have memory that says that is ECC enabled, the memory itself, but then you turn on ECC, the motherboard can say that ECC is enabled. It will tell the operating system that ECC is enabled. Whether ECC is actually enabled is unknown unless you test for it, unless you can actually output a log that catches errors, because it's not validated. And I'm of the opinion that some motherboard manufacturers in their BIOS firmware has simply said, if ECC enabled, the line of code is literally tell OS ECC is enabled equals true. And that's all they do. This is why when you have ECC, you really need to have an end-to-end validated platform, which Ryzen isn't. So that's what I think about that. Perhaps an Ultra Veridical says, according to Wikipedia, all DDR5 are technically RDIMMs. No, I have a video on why DDR5 ECC is not the ECC you're thinking of. Go watch that video now. You should definitely. So. Anil says, do you watch anime? I don't have the time anymore. I have watched all of Dragon Ball Z. I've watched Naruto up to Shippuden. I used to, when I wasn't doing tech and I was still academic, I would have to take a bus ride 3 hours each way twice a week. And on that, I'd watch 9 episodes of Naruto, or 9 episodes of Dragon Ball Z, and that was fine. But if I was doing the same journey today, I'd be getting up my laptop and I'd be writing a review. I'd be planning my next video or something. That being said, I don't travel well in cars or buses, and that was a bus. I much prefer trains. The Z-Man RW3, $10 super chat, thank you. Analog/mixed signal products are normally on more mature process nodes. Is this because of cost or because of improved signal integrity properties? Both. Analog doesn't scale as well for power, especially. So it's like high voltage. There's no point doing a 7nm high voltage chip because your tolerances have to be so fine, and you end up designing a product that could be built on 90nm anyway. And then it's also, cost. So Protobot, have you ever watched Ben Eater? Speaking about the Boyd simulation I showed you ages ago. A little. And then people saying, whose line is it anyway? Yeah. John Cutler, do you like Peter Kay and Frankie Boyle? I do not like Peter Kay. I think he's a bit of a pompous ass. Frankie Boyle's okay. I think he's actually got his head on right, in the sense that he knows what he's doing is shock in his comedy, and he does it for the sake of it being shocking. And I don't think people realize that it's kind of an act, kind of a persona. If you watch Frankie Boyle's more analytical news comedy, I think he did a TV show for 4 seasons with guest comedians. He can do that, and he does some really insightful columns that I've read. I haven't really seen much from him recently though, but I don't go out and watch it. So Let's see. Peter says, how much impact will the Brexit have on the UK and its tech sector and innovation? Already having issues importing stuff, everything coming through. It's a bit of a pain, and waiting to see what I will need visa-wise to get into Europe, which is, yeah, going to be a pain. Mike asks, will Alderlake beat Zen 3 in multi-thread? At this point, I don't care until I can see data. I don't go off the leaks. There's no point. One big issue is that most of the leaks we're seeing now with Alderlake, if they are true, is their Geekbench and Geekbench 5. That AES test has recently been accelerated because of Intel adding the AES instruction. So it's hard to say. If Intel created an Intel City near their island fab, I'd totally move there. I mean, yeah, it's a bit... I would like to go to the island fab. And then Facebook is nearby, I think, and they've got some data centers there as well. It's... DK suggesting games. The problem is if I get too much into an idle game, it actually detracts from work. So I have to be picky. I like stuff that I can complete quickly. I don't like idle games that take 17 years to complete. And I know some do because I've played some of them. Tweedle, thanks for sending me the link. I'll check my email after the stream, of course. Truth, good to see you. And again, thanks for 50k. I know we chatted over DMs, but it's good to see you all here. Now, I think now that I've got 50k, I think I need to be more professional. Maybe we need a website. And I know people have been asking for merchandise. Hands up if you would buy a potato. Not a chip, not a wafer, just a potato. Do you ever tire of arguing with people online? As long as somebody's learning something, it's that old saying: if you debate somebody in a formal setting, your goal isn't to convince the other side, the other person you're debating. Your goal is to inform the audience. And it's great fun. If you want to see some really fun debates, Stephen Fry on the topic of religion does some good debates. Desirius 3, watch Boruto. I've seen a couple, but ages and ages ago. It's just going through. If you've got any more questions, then at TechTechPotato in the chat, please, and so I can definitely see them. Sebastian says, Mercurial Cores, did you look into them? I have the paper in one of my tabs. I think I might want to read it a bit more and perhaps do a dedicated video on it. So, thanks, Kutsu Jarble, for the $5. Plush potato, yep, that's been suggested. I think the issue is that with a plushie, you need a high quality one, and I need the time, a person, a source to find a good one. And the thing is, I'm also not geared up to sending stuff out, so I'd also need an avenue for distribution, which is. I've spoken to a couple of people because you obviously have the sort of Teespring type merch store, and if you actually look at the revenue model for Teespring, it's actually quite bad for the creator, or at least it's not as good as I think it should be. But yeah, merch is. I've looked into a few things, and I'm not happy with many of them. But then again, I probably need to do more research. So people have suggestions. I know Wendell suggested the one that they use that's based in Northeast US. Though he did say, and I think that's the same one that PC World are using now. Again, that it comes down to where do you want it shipped. I think it'd be a bit weird if I didn't ship to the UK, but only ship to the US, and international shipping, that all comes. So, PT Jansen, have you played Cuphead? You can complete that quickly. I haven't. I'm of the opinion that it's still overpriced. I've been waiting for sales to bring it down to about the £5 level. Maybe that's just me. But Steam sales lowest I've seen is 12 from 15. So it's, Namib J says, are you sad there are no unlocked versions of Milan? Or are there fundamental technical problems with sustaining 1600 watts PPT on SP3? Yeah, so the socket, if you use a Gen 1 board, is only built for 240. If you use a Gen 3 board, they're built for 280. Now, server motherboards themselves are literally built to run the processor at its rated power and a little bit more, not a lot more. So the fact that they're unlocked or not, well, it's epic. It's a server processor. They're rarely unlocked. AMD does do custom designs for partners, who, what if they want more power, if they want a higher TDP version, AMD will accommodate and they'll help provide designs. And so Supermicro, say Supermicro were selling epic Milan systems to Microsoft Azure, but Microsoft Azure wanted a 350 watt version from AMD. AMD would work with Microsoft and Supermicro to help build the platforms to handle 350 watts in a server-grade environment with JDEC and the supported infrastructure to sell them solely to Microsoft. That's how that works. So, XD SDD Lord asks, do you think Microsoft optimizing for hybrid technology could impact the performance of older hardware? It shouldn't do. It should just have a fallback. Meltdown Spectre says, Stephen Fry on Jordan Peterson's podcast recently was great. I'm not too keen on watching anything Jordan Peterson, to be honest. So, XD STD Lord says, work with Linus. I mean, I mentioned earlier in the stream that maybe he's a person I should have on my interview, my series of interviews. Though it's the problem I have is that series is tending towards completely being white men. I do want to have some representation of what the industry is actually like in there. Hiran asks, why is Ryzen so much more power efficient compared to similar Intel? It's TSMC, 7 nanometer. That's a tech problem, but if there are people believing in flat Earth, why people don't also believe in flat Sun, flat Moon, flat Mars, and flat whatever stars? The reason they give is that Mars is observably spherical. So, see, going through some more questions. Who has power over another, Intel versus ASML? Does Intel depend on ASML, or is it the other way around? Intel depends on ASML. There was a table of how many EUV machines each company has purchased. Because don't forget, it's not only Intel, Samsung, TSMC that need EUV machines, it's also the DRAM manufacturers. And Intel was not well positioned on that list. So even though Intel does have a big stake in ASML, if they really want to push with their own technology, they really need to get their manufacturing right, but also buy more machines, it seems. Ian, do you watch Veritasium, Vsauce, Kurzgesagt? No, I don't. I don't watch Veritasium. I don't watch Vsauce. I don't know. Their style of presenting I'm not really too fond of, to be honest. I mean, it's probably nothing against them. It's just some people react with different methods of learning, and I don't know, at times I find it too condescending. So that's just me. Bill Joe III asks, what do you think the Zen 4 prices will be, considering the Zen 3 price hike? And do you think prices are fair? Hey, silicon shortage. Silicon is tough to make. If they're in the lead, then yeah, prices may go up again. It's a premium product. Latest generation. I mean, people happily spend, how much on an iPhone? It's the one thing I do find annoying is the increase in the price in motherboards, because 8 years ago, $170 would get you the best motherboard on the market, or pretty much the best ROG motherboard. Now $170 barely gets you an X570 at all. Now there have been lots and lots of innovations, and I was main motherboard editor for Anantech for so many years, and I went through so many of those motherboards, and you could see the improvements they were making in unifying design, aesthetics, coolers, power delivery, consistency, performance, BIOS, software. So I can see the price rise. I just find it really weird that what used to be the high-end motherboard price 8 years ago is now literally you can't buy the best chipset on AMD, or you can in a deal. So ASN asks, do you think EUV pellicle will help Samsung catch up to TSMC yields? Not sure. I'm really waiting for Samsung to do a new Samsung Foundry Forum. They didn't really do one last year. I think they're planning to do one this year. But yeah. Sion Das asks, do you think RISC-V will ever become mainstream like ARM or x86? I think it will find lots of uses in the embedded space and the companion silicon space. So earlier I said that a basic smartphone... sorry, Keith, your email just came through. A basic smartphone, you have your main SoC, and perhaps some of the RF is on the latest process node, but there is 6 to 8 times that amount of silicon more in the processor, like DDIC, control, storage, all that uses non-leading edge process nodes. And some of that, does require control, and then it's a case of, do you go ARM, do you go RISC-V? And it depends on the size of the company as to how they can deploy it and who's going to deploy it. It's say for example, MediaTek sells tons and tons of chipsets, but they also still sell things like DVD player, silicon and stuff. So perhaps the next generation of those might go RISC-V. Who knows? Let's Makeship make good plushes. I'll have to have a look at that. Yeah, I think I've seen Makeship. Science or Something says Asianometry is a good channel. I've been seeing more of his videos pop up in my suggested. I haven't really clicked on any of them because to me some of them are like why TSMC is the powerhouse it is today. Well, I know that, so I don't really want to watch that video. I'm more of a person who will watch channels that are recommended by other people who I trust, colleagues, peers. If they've found a good channel that is worth watching, it's like music. I listen to the same 10, 12 bands repeatedly over and over again. I rarely ever venture outside of those, unless it's recommended. So yeah, I think also some of these things, it's some of these videos not Asianometries, but just in general, it's if I want to find out, say, more about a manufacturing process, because I go to industry events like IEDM, ISSEC, ITSI, I would much rather do a tutorial course there than watch a video. And I know I'm in a unique position. It kind of sounds to be a bit of a downer on other YouTubers, but if I... So here's my 2019 IEDM short course book. And I'm not sure if you can see that, but it says Technologies for Memory-Centric Computing. We're talking about 3D stacked DRAM from Samsung, memory technologies from Intel, 3D NAND from Western Digital. And, it's a good 300 slides in here. There's one on manufacturing technology that is absolutely covered in notes. I know I'm much more of a lecturer learner than I guess a YouTube learner. So, Vietchin, any origin story on your YouTube channel name? Yeah, I think I've said it in the stream before, but in finding names, there are a lot of tech YouTube channels based on the ABC concept, Linus Tech Tips, Linus Media Group, Craft Computing, and then a lot of important ones had tech in the name. I've noticed that a lot of ones also had their own name inside, so I was playing around with that. The joke about me biting wafers, that's been going on for a while now, for a few years. And then it just so happened that in one of the first videos I did with Wendell, we were at an AMD event and we did a video there. This is before I had my channel. And it's the auto-generated captions from YouTube did something wrong and actually says TechTechPotato in it. So I took that. There's a community post on my channel which explains, shows the picture with the caption in there. So that's kind of how it comes about. First computer I owned was a Commodore 64. So I'll thank you for the $5, Cat Daddy. Somebody asked, what's the future of crypto? I have no idea. All I know is the crypto I have is now half the value it was 2 months ago. So, time flow. How long has it been? Have I been almost going for 3 hours? Oh. Tech Deals would be proud. Nikolaus Lurs, thank you for the $2, says, any thoughts on open source silicon fab tool chains? The problem is there's too much money involved in that. I mean, Cadence and Synopsys has most of the tool chain wrapped up. I think that's what you mean. So, the person who just has an underscore for a name, do you think x86 will open its licenses to new actors to counter the rise of ARM? No. Though some of the x86 patents have expired. So there's stuff like that. If Namib J says, if only these lectures were accessible to us normal people. The issue there is that they charge for these events to non-press. So if you're academic or if you're in the industry, you actually have to pay to go to these tutorials. Because I'm press, I get in for free. It's though if you go online, Ona Mutlu, I'll put his name in the chat because it doesn't always come through. Watch his videos. He does very good lectures. If you want to see the Hot Chips lectures, they're always online about 2 or 3 months after the event. There are some of the other conferences also put their lectures online. Though, yeah, it can be a walled garden. And that's kind of why I appreciate that I'm in a privileged position being part of the press. That's why at some level try to get it out to you guys. So any channel suggestions for learning silicon design? Not really. Lopany asks, Ian, Wendell, and Anthony, that's a video I'd watch. So that's probably something for LTX 2022, if there happens to be one. I'm of the opinion that I may be invited to the next LTX, should there be one. I know Wendell at some point was thinking of getting me to LTX 2020, but then obviously pandemic, so. Noitek says, did you play that game on the C64 with a bear on a castle platformer? No. I sometimes listen to C64 chiptunes on YouTube. That's always fun. None of that lo-fi hip hop. Give me some SID music. Do you think there'll be an increase in ASIC specific server workloads similar to those for machine learning and Google's Argos for video transcoding? Yes, for companies that are big enough, for workloads that are generic enough, for workloads that are big enough. So Google video transcoding, massive workload. So yeah, dedicated silicon. Machine learning, yeah, dedicated silicon. Something a bit more nuanced. Best thing there is in Hot Chips, there is a presentation on the Anton 3 ASIC, which is a chip specifically for molecular dynamics. That's going to be a great talk. I can already tell it's a great talk as a chemist, as somebody who studied chemistry for 7 years. Kofasa says, why are PSUs more efficient the higher voltage they get? Just a factor of having a larger number. Your losses are fixed, but if your voltage is high, your fraction is less. Something like that. I'm not too au fait with that sort of technology. VC Pester, I know you from the PC World live streams. The folks from the PC World Discord say hey and love it when you visit their streams. I worry sometimes because when I comment on the stream, I always get shouted out. And I do get some people who keep saying, why do you keep butting into their live stream? They know it's not about you. And yeah, it's not about me. I just sometimes like to throw in my 2p like any other viewer. And, you know, I could do that on a secondary account, I guess. But I have been speaking with Adam about going on one of the PC World full nerds. We were talking about it a month ago, but then we had two very strong GPU type video launches or video focused weeks. And I'd much rather go on a CPU focused type of video, type of podcast, because that's where I think I'd be most valuable. I didn't really have anything to add to the, say, FSR comms. So when that sort of video comes around, I think, it'd be fun to go on. Sorry, I know I'm not looking at the camera always. It's because my chat is up here. And Nicholas is suggesting check out Zero to ASIC for semiconductor design. Ona Mutlu, his stuff is very memory intensive and not too much compute. I need to look at more. Maybe it's time for me and John Masters to do something. Video on the basics of semiconductor manufacturing and terminologies. Yeah. I mean, that's sort of like tech quickie type stuff, isn't it? So one series on the basics. It would, I'd have to be planned. My problem is I'm already like 15 videos behind on stuff I want to talk about. So Nice Lake asks, what are some of the 12 bands you said you like? This will date me. So let's say Linkin Park. That's not necessarily number one. Spine Shank, listening to Amaranth. I'm blanking. Let me have a look in my. So recent. So I do this thing. I'm not sure if any of you else do. Is when I was revising for academic stuff, high school, university. When it became serious study time, I would set a playlist of 22 songs that I knew inside and out. And for those, 2-3 months that I would be revising, I would just listen to that music because on some level, I sometimes remember music better than what I'm studying. So by listening to those 22 tracks just linearly in the same order on repeat, I know what's coming. I mentally get it. And I actually did it again for the first time in years a couple of months ago. So, I forgot Dragon Force, Strapping Young Lad, System of a Down, obviously. Devin Townsend is I like some of his stuff. It got a bit weird towards the end. So, Blink-182. Where is it? Trying to think of Power Glove, Arch Enemy. I've been listening to more sort of psytrance, anime, speed metal. I'm of the opinion that if you listen to fast music, your brain will think faster. It's kind of like puts you on a beat. The problem is, if I listen to things that are too fast, I found out that I get tired. And I'm not sure whether that's because it's overworking my brain or whether it's like, oh, this is fun and let's be sleepy. So there you go. There's some bands. Yeah, Vicky, I'm not too sure I can answer you on more technical compute design. To be honest, even though Onamutlu is a good source, I've really only watched a handful of his lectures. I really need to watch more, to be honest. Lopini, any misheard lyrics? The Google salsa cookies. Technicolor Tube says, you've been streaming 3 hours straight and haven't skipped a beat. I've done a 2-hour stream before. I've never done a 3-hour stream. The time has gone. And yes, R.I.P. Chester, definitely. No Sabaton. Or Tool. It's for me, there has to be a specific track that gets me hooked in. So with Spine Shank, I think it was synthetic. With Dragon Force, it was Through the Fire and Flames, obviously, because of Guitar Hero. For Amaranth, it was Digital World. I can't remember who it was for Arch Enemy, though, the one in my list right now is The Eagle Flies Alone. System of a Down is one of those weird bands where I listen to the whole back catalogue, all 120 songs. I will just put into a play. I'll just play and I can play random and that's fine. Strapping Young Lad was All Hail the New Flesh? No. And Devin Townsend specifically, rather than Strapping Young Lad, was Christine. Blink-182, All the Small Things, yeah. Lordy was fun just because of Eurovision. So I do listen to some of the older stuff. So I have Sweating Bullets. There is... who am I thinking of? Metallica, a few of their songs. Mostly from Guitar Hero. So I know some people hate that, but it's that sort of thing. I will listen to, so I did used to like Dance Dance Revolution, but on the keyboard younger, and that's all sort of, trancey, really fast, high BPM stuff. I don't play it anymore because I'm now 35. So Tweedle says that's just memorization and doesn't mean you understand the subject. Yes, learning and understanding are memorizing and understanding are two very different things. The problem is a lot of exams are memorization. Amir Shavana, Bandmate. I actually saw Bandmate live in London a few years ago. Yes, Bandmate is good. Also Bandmate. Marcus says, are there any innovations in battery technology on the horizon that have you excited? No. Battery technology is I'm of the opinion it's at a more of a fundamental limit, because at university I did a module on that sort of battery level solid state technology, and one of my friends at the time, he did his PhD in battery technology, and at one point I was going to write up an article about it, and the problem is batteries have to be good in power density, so power to volume, power to weight, and energy per dollar, as in to build and to generate. And lithium ion is really the only one that's at seasonal 3. There have been aluminium batteries recently, but they fall down on energy density. They're about only half as dense, but they work at the other two. The problem is lithium is the lightest metal, so as it moves through, we've worked anodes technologies, cathode technologies. There's lithium air batteries, lithium polymer batteries, but they can't get to the same state where we are with lithium ion. So, and yes, brain overclocking. I agree. Noitek points out some other music types. So when I go to sleep, I actually listen to rain sounds. I've tried listening to beach sounds, but it turns out that just increases my heart rate, and I have no idea why. I will happily listen to an hour, a couple of hours before bed of just, as long as I keep my eyes closed or just sitting with no other stimulus, I'll happily listen to synthetic rain and lightning sounds. In my video with Jim Keller, one of the things he mentions, though we didn't really elaborate on, is the need to look after yourself, and things like meditation or preparing your brain for sleep. The sort of, when we were talking about earlier about memorization versus understanding, the point at which it transfers from that short-term to long-term memory, and then it helps with the understanding, is during that mental prepare time. I mean, they say you shouldn't have any screens on, say, an hour before bed or such. Don't think of it in the context of viewing a screen and the blue light and keeping you awake. Think of it on the context of coalescing your day's thoughts and actions into something more tangible. Yeah. Technicolor Tube, have you heard of any of Tom DeLong, that's Blink-182's Alien Conspiracy Talks? I heard he'd become a conspiracy nut, and yeah, I'll just stay away from that. VC Esther says, as long as you play along with us when we try to rile up Gordon over the subject of consoles killing the PC, you're always welcome in the full nerd chat. Tweedle says, I don't know any of the bands he named except for System of a Down and Linkin Park. Go back, make a list, and just do a YouTube search. TechTechPotato, will you be able to make a video that explains the full packaging process of silicon? No, because it's that big. To be honest, these days, most games I prefer playing with a controller, except for the few where the mouse and keyboard really matter. Yeah, this is one when you talk about music. People bring out the dozen bands that they like, and I'm like, I'm okay when people recommend one thing at a time. It's just not a dozen. Yeah, Tweedle says there are battery technologies on the rise and they're just too expensive to produce right now. As the thing is, it's the other two. It's the energy per weight and energy per volume. Jack says, have you seen hot liquid metal batteries? Yes. Is it sulfur at 300 degrees Celsius is a great battery. The only problem is it's at 300 degrees. And we have just hit the 3-hour mark. I'm sorry. I think that's going to be it. It is now 7 p.m. I still don't know the results of Formula One, so I'm going to go listen to that, I think. Watch that. Have some dinner, as you all should. I hope you've enjoyed the stream. Some talk about, global foundries, one of the first topics we spoke about. But as always, enjoy your crisps, get your minimum specification in. And all the people asking about topics, you're going to have to rewind 3 hours. But it was a good chat. Thanks to all the super chats as well. And I've got some videos to make tomorrow along with the barbecue, so that'll be fun. Maybe I'll post some barbecue. You can see all how bad I barbecue. But thank you all for coming, for staying, for listening, for asking questions. And I'll catch you on the next one.